Hi, this is John Hartch, and welcome to episode 19 of Left Turn at Albuquerque. Today we'll be celebrating the 80th birthday of our favorite skunk, Pepe Le Pew, and his entire series of cartoon collected here on the Superstars disc, the Pepe Le Pew collection, The Best of the Best. This was the first time they did something like this, which was great. However, it did highlight one flaw that does come into play in these character-specific discs.
I knew I should have made a left turn at Albuquerque. I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. I knew I should have taken that left turn at Albuquerque. I should have turned left at Albuquerque.
Okay, before moving on to our next DVD, I saw Weasel Stop on Tune In With Me the day last episode came out, and I realized I talked all about how the dog reminded me of Arthur Honeycutt and all the Moonrunners Dukes of Hazzard discussion, without mentioning who actually did the voice of the dog. It was Lloyd Perryman, who didn't do many cartoons, but he certainly used his voice in his career. He was a member of the famous Western singing group Sons of the Pioneers. He performed alongside their famous lead singer Leonard Sly, who, as we mentioned in an earlier episode, became way better known as Roy Rogers. Later on, the lead singer was Ken Curtis, known to people who watched Westerns on Me TV as Festus from Gunsmoke. Curtis was also a charter member of the John Ford Stock Company and got the group to appear in a number of his films, including Rio Grande and The Searchers, both with John Wayne. The latter was recently reissued as a brand new 4K restoration from Warner Archives that's getting a lot of love. Have to look about picking that one up. Maybe you look about doing a special review here?
That'll be the day.
Okay, Duke. Now, Warner's had a very scattershot record since they ended the Golden Collections. As we've talked about, the first attempts at follow-ups, Hair Extraordinaire and Frustrated Fowl, put out new to DVD cartoons, but it ran into problems when it was discovered that the quote-unquote widescreen versions of some of the tunes were merely cropped, though this is how they were presented in certain theaters back in the 50s. The issue was there was no option to see them as they were originally made. A decade and a half later, we're still waiting for corrected versions of all the shorts, but we're getting closer. The next round of releases had a solid collection of Foghorn Leghorn cartoons, with one repeat from the Golden Collection box sets, which we talked about last episode. But at the same time, they put out a Tweety and Sylvester set where every cartoon on the disc had been previously released. We'll go over this eventually, briefly. In between, they also put out the essential 2-disc sets for Bugs and Daffy, consisting again almost entirely of previously released material, as we've gone over. For the next round of single disc sets, one had the Roadrunner and Coyote cartoons, all from 1965 or later. There's not exactly a large audience clamoring for these particular tunes. Not sure why this was a priority, but we will get around to discussing it. On the other end of the spectrum, they also put out this collection on December 27th, 2011, the entire output of Pepe Le Pew cartoons. Now, this is a worthwhile endeavor. Like the Foghorn Leghorn set and the Tweety and Sylvester one as well, they allowed viewers to choose between full screen and widescreen, but only at the very beginning of the disc. If you want to switch between formats midstream, you'll have to do what I showed in the video I made last episode. Annoying, but most people aren't doing A and B comparisons. The first 7 tunes are pre-widescreen era, so there's only one version, and they're all in chronological order this time. Chuck Jones did almost all of these, some with help, and Michael Maltese wrote many of them. I'll mention when he doesn't. Pepe made his debut in Odor-able Kitty, released on January 6, 1945, co-written by Maltese and Ted Pierce. An abused cat, who may or may not be Claude from the Aristocat, decides to get his revenge by pretending to be a skunk, only to be harassed by an amorous Pepe Le Pew. The gag of this one is that Pepe is just a persona put on by a henpecked husband. And even though Maltese wrote most of the Pepe shorts, he was very loosely based on Ted Pierce's reputation as somewhat of a ladies' man. They just threw a Charles Boyer impersonation on top of it. This originally appeared on Golden Collection Volume 3. We only had the blue ribbon reissue titles for this. Chuck drags Bugs in for a pseudo cameo here.
What's up, Doc?
Now, this was part of the AAP package in syndication. Might have been on in New York every now and then, but it was definitely on TBS. Scent-imental Over You was released on March 8, 1947, written again by Pierce and Maltese. A hairless Chihuahua wants a coat of her own, so she finds a black one with a white stripe right down the middle of the back. Needless to say, it scares away everyone except you know who. This is the one where Pepe's character is really solidified. The blue ribbon title card actually gives the skunk an over-the-title credit, Pepe Le Pew in. This was also syndicated in the AAP package, again on occasionally in New York, but definitely on TBS. Now we come to the questionable one of the bunch. Odor of the Day came out on October 2nd, 1948, directed by Art Davis and written by Lloyd Turner. A dog and skunk battle, in silence for the most part, in a cabin for who gets the bed on a cold winter's night. The title makes it clear this is all about a skunk, and they already had done 2 Pepes, so it's not an unreasonable assumption. It's just this skunk doesn't have any of the characteristics we associate with him, and all the rest of the Pepes were basically done in Chuck Jones's realm. Now, this had appeared before the other 2. It could be considered a proto-Pepe. We did mention one tune in an earlier episode that may be an uncredited appearance. We'll talk about that when we're done with everything else. Now, there's another syndicated one, but outside of the AAP package, since that ended in July 1948. Next is For Scent-imental Reasons, released on November 12, 1949, done by the Jones-Maltese duo, as were the rest from now on through the end of the 50s. This is the one where Pepe invades a perfume store and a cat is sent in to get him out, but in the end the tables are turned. This Oscar winner has appeared multiple times on DVD, first on Golden Collection Volume 1, then on the Academy Awards Collection, then finally on Platinum Collection Volume 1, which we did in Episode 2. This was the debut of Penelope Pussycat, though unnamed here, and it turns out this was yet another entry into the Ed Seltzer catalog of great business decisions. After Chuck finished this, he was told not to make any more of them. They weren't funny. It then, of course, went on to win the Oscar. I remember this one a lot from the ABC Saturday morning show. Scent-imental Romeo came out on March 24, 1951. A Parisian cat tries to get herself into the zoo to get fed by hiding in the skunk cage, the same cage as a certain other skunk. Chuck and crew still had plenty to play with as far as seduction plans went. This was also on Platinum Collection Volume 2. We did it back in Episode 5. To be honest, this one, as well as the 2 that follow, I don't particularly remember seeing, but there were notes on the Looney Tunes Wiki fan page about what was edited out when it aired on ABC, so it did run there at some point. Little Bo Pepe was released almost exactly a year later, March 29, 1952. At a Foreign Legion outpost, Pepe wants to join up to forget his broken heart and scare off the Legionnaires. Meanwhile, the mascot cat accidentally gets white paint on her back, previously set up. The early scenes allow the gang to get a lot of the Foreign Legion jokes out of their system, and it's a pretty good turnabout ending. Like I said, I don't remember seeing this one on its own, but it was part of the Bugs Bunny Valentine's Day special back in the late 70s. Wild Over You came out on July 11, 1953. At the Paris Exposition of 1900, a wildcat escapes, causing fear and panic. She paints herself black and white to scare others off, but one brave soul tries to catch her. An interesting choice, as the cat being chased isn't a shrinking violet, but quite wily. Pretty good for not being a coyote. Yet, despite all her physical assaults, Pepe just keeps on coming. Again, this wasn't shown a lot when I was younger, but it's been in the Boomerang rotation for years, so I've more than made up for it. Now, we did Dog Poundin' on Platinum Collection Volume 3, so let me add the release date, January 2nd, 1954. The first widescreen cartoon on the disc, and it isn't even really a Pepe cartoon. This is the Tweety and Sylvester cartoon that has a cameo from our skunk at the end. Now, this was the first cartoon produced after the studio reopened after the 3D flirtation back in 1953. It was also among the first to have 2 versions done, the regular and the matted widescreen. This little segment here is probably the best example of the widescreen matting on this one. The Cat's Paw returns to the March release date window, in this case March 20th, 1954. A look back by Pepe when he lived under the shadow of his namesake, Pepe Le Moco. A cat on the docks gets splashed with paint, so he ends up chasing her through the Cat's Paw. This is the first cartoon where Penelope actually gets her name.
Come on, Penelope.
While I was watching the full screen version, I thought the cropping was really going to do a number on it, so Chuck has a lot of things going on at the top of the frame, but maybe they slightly reformatted it before, quote-unquote, widescreening it. The stuff at the top appeared just below the top bar. I vaguely remember this. It was probably syndicated if I saw it. The Looney Tunes wiki page actually has a full episode listing of the Nickelodeon show where this aired back in September of 1999. So it aired there. And what a fun time we'd have trying to get this ending through today. Past Perfumance came out on May 21st, 1955. A casting agent in a movie studio needs a skunk for a dictatorial director. He finds a cat, paints its tail white, and then Pepe shows up. Since it takes place in 1913, I noticed a lot of these Pepes are period pieces. Anyway, they get a chance to use a lot of their silent film gags, like Clara Beau, the Max Sennett. And if you ever wanted to hear Arthur Q. Bryant speak French, here's your chance.
No can locatez-vous un skunk, monsieur le directeur?
Now, do not watch the widescreen version of this. Things are cut off left and right, or should I say top and bottom. Now, I definitely remember this one. It may have been shown both on Saturday mornings as well in syndication. I think most likely Saturday morning, since I don't remember the opening credits. 2 Cents Worth was released on October 15, 1955. This one was written and directed by Chuck Jones, the first where Maltese wasn't involved. A bank robber uses a cat to create a skunk to pull off a crime, but doesn't count on Pepe's arrival. There's a very athletic Le Pew here in this one, leaping on a cable car, swinging through trees, skiing with ease. There's slight issues with cropping on this one, but nothing too bad. Bank gets cut off at one point. Pretty sure this is syndicated, might have shown up on Saturdays later on. Heaven Sent came out in guess what month? Right, March. This time on the 31st in 1956. Also both written and directed by Jones. A cat in a sea town surrounded by dogs finds herself a newly painted white flagpole. She puts a stripe down her back to scare them away, but attracts Pepe. It has a bit of an odd ending. Actually, there really isn't an ending. That's the odd thing. No reveal she's really a cat or turning the tables. We just keep going.
As a distinguished colleague of mine once noted, there is very little difference between men and women. Both. Vive la différence!
This one is only available in full frame. I guess they never did the matting process on it. It came out on Golden Collection Volume 6. They also didn't show this one much, but it's another one that's been in the Boomerang rotation for quite a while. Touche and Go was released on October 12, 1957, and the Jones-Maltese duo is back. Pepe ends up in a French sea town chasing a cat who got her white paint striped from a road painter. It has the distinction of being a new locale, and Pepe does more and more action, including a fight with a shark underwater, where he actually uses his natural weapon instead of people finding it out for themselves. To be honest, the widescreen on this really didn't make a difference at all. I don't think I ever saw this one, but if I did, it was probably a Saturday morning one, and guess what? It's also been on Boomerang for a while. Really Scent came out on June 27, 1959. This one was directed by Abe Levitow, though as usual, it's mostly Chuck Jones's crew, and Maltese is back writing. A cat is born with a white stripe down her back, which causes all the male cats to run away. But then Pepe comes to town, so she's thrilled to get someone who wants to be with her, until she smells him. Will true love conquer all? This has June Foray as the narrator involved with Fabrette's side of the story.
Wait, Fabrette. If you cannot lick them, join them. Look, over there.
And has a great turnabout ending. Some signs get cut off in the widescreen. Other than that, things are mostly center frame. Now, this one was in syndication since I was little. I remember seeing this a long time. Who Sent You was released on April 23, 1960. Jones is back directing, and this was the last one written by Maltese. A cat wants to go on a cruise and sneaks through a gate to get in a newly painted white gate. Pepe spots her from the shore and runs out across the water, then under the sea, to get to the boat to pursue her. A pretty bad matte job on this. Lots of top of frame cut off of gags, heads, etc. Stick to full screen on this one. Now I remember bits and pieces of this one, again probably from Saturday morning. Not on Boomerang, so I haven't seen it in a while. Ascent of the Matterhorn came out on June 24, 1961. Written and directed by Monsieur Charles Jones. A female cat gets hit with a runaway road line painter. What again? And Pepe sweeps down from the mountains to chase her. Then the two of them run from peak to peak across the snow giving a new definition to a chaste romance. Interesting that all the opening credits have the French equivalents of everyone's names, as well as some interesting camera work for a cartoon. Surprisingly, for such a panoramic cartoon, widescreen wasn't too bad. It was very low cutoff. Really don't remember seeing this one at all, and no, it's not on Boomerang or Max, so this is really the only place to see it. Though it was on Tune In With Me back in January. The final short starring Pepe was Louvre Come Back to Me, released on August 18, 1962, directed by Jones and Maurice Noble and written by John Dunn. Pepe visits the Louvre to catch a cat who got her stripe from wet paint on a flagpole. Her boyfriend, who sort of resembles Claude from the Hubie and Bert cartoons, tries to stop him, but that smell keeps getting in the way. Widescreen wasn't too bad, nothing really got cut. Now, I didn't see this one much. Saturday morning, if I did, I kind of remember the end joke.
I can tell you chaps one thing. It's not always easy to hold this smile.
It's not on Boomerang, but it is on Max, and it's also available as a bonus on the Gay Paris Blu-ray in restored form. Now, Pepe remained a prominent part of the Warner Bros. Stable of characters, appearing in the marching line at the beginning of the Bugs Bunny show, a lot of specials and films in the 70s and 80s, plus having a feature role in Carrot Blanca, taking the place of Claude Rains' Louie. He was also pretty prominent in 1996's Space Jam. Recently, there's been a move to push him aside, kind of putting his actions in a different light than they were originally intended, to put it nicely. I think we have a lot bigger problems in the world than the implications of an amorous skunk from the 40s and 50s. Guess it's a good thing he never did a cover of Baby It's Cold Outside.
I really can't stay.
Baby, it's cold outside.
I gotta go
But
away.
baby, it's cold outside.
But in the long run, he'll still be with us. After all, love wins out in the end, doesn't it? Looking at it from a collector's point of view, this is the best of the Superstars releases up to that point, and you can make an argument the best overall. Now, if you've seen more than 3 of these, you notice a certain pattern emerging of things that just keep happening. I mean, how many times is a female cat going to get a white stripe painted down her back? That's why the ones that subvert the formula, like for Scent-imental Reasons, Wild Over You, Really Scent, they kind of stand out among the rest. Now, this is one disc, if they ever wanted to reissue it on Blu-ray, they could just do it straight up, not change a thing about it, just put any upgrades with original titles they may or may not have. But just redoing things as they were isn't good enough for us, so let's make one edition. We discussed Fair and Warmer back in episode 4 on Collector's Choice Volume 2. This wasn't included on this DVD, but if Odor of the Day made it on, it's certainly worth discussing if this has a Pepe cameo. Like Odor, he doesn't speak, and he could just be a plain old skunk, were it not for this music. Sound familiar?
Look, petite one, I am the lover chaser. Observe.
Now, if along came Daffy can be retrofitted to include Yosemite Sam, we can make the argument for this one. Like I said, this came out in the 3rd round of Superstars releases, albeit a couple months after the Roadrunner Coyote set, and the 6th overall, or 7th if you count the overseas Bugs Bunny set. I know we've only done 4 so far, mentioned the 5th, as well as the Phantom Elmer Fudd Superstars set. We'll probably do the Roadrunner one last, since it's very different than the others. With the beginning of the Platinum Blu-ray collections right around this point, it was an open question how much longer this series would continue. Answer: not long. Okay, one quick update before we go. Warner Archives announced their March releases. No Looney Tunes content. The animation slot this time goes to Magilla Gorilla on Blu-ray. It'll be a lot like the Top Cat set. The shows will be newly restored from the original negatives, and unlike the DVD release, it will include the original credits, including the ideal tags and some bridge segments that weren't included in the syndicated version. So far this year, Warner Archives has had 2 animated releases in January and 1 each in February and March, plus the Wait Till Your Father Gets Home delayed release. George is making good on his promise to up the animation content in 2025. Keep it up, guys. Next time, it'll be the beginning of our super celebration of somebody's 90th birthday. I'm John Harter. Thanks for watching.